Hey everyone, welcome back to another video of mine, where today we're going to be solving Leetcode problem 347 titled Top K Frequent Elements. So we're given an integer array nums and an integer k, and we simply need to return the k most frequent elements. We may return this answer in any order. So in example 1, we have a nums input array of 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3. And in this case, our k parameter is going to be equal to the integer value of 2, which in other words means that we need to simply return a list of the two most frequent elements that appear in our nums input array, which in this case are going to be the values 1 and 2. Right? And if we apply that same logic to example 2, we get that k is simply equal to 1, which is equal to the length of our input array nums, and so we simply return a list containing the only element that we have in the input array nums, which is going to be, of course, 1. Right? So whenever we're working with the frequencies of different elements within our array, especially like problems notorious like this, the best thing that we can do is actually grab the counter of nums to easily access how many different times an element within our input array nums actually occurs. And that way we can usually get the max value or the most occurring element from our input array nums using the counter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize a count variable, right? A count variable, and I'm going to set that equal to the counter of nums. And usually to access the counter keyword and to grab the counter of any data structures like lists or arrays in Python, we'd actually have to say from collections import counter. However, all of these libraries and modules are already imported within Leetcode for us, and so we don't actually have to do that, which is another great thing about Leetcode, right? So now that we've grabbed the counter of nums, let's actually initialize another variable, which is going to be cur, right? And this cur is going to be set to initialize to 0. And what the cur's job is simply monitoring how many different frequent elements or most occurring elements are we actually removing from nums and adding it to our result array. And we have to keep doing this until our cur is actually less than k, which basically means we've taken out and appended to our result array less frequent elements than we're allowed to, basically what k is, right? So we'll have res to be an empty array, and this res is basically going to contain these most frequent elements, which we can ultimately return res once we're done actually dynamically appending the most frequent elements to it. Now let's actually have our while loop or conditional that actually checks while our cur, or while the amount of frequent elements that we've put in our res array is actually less than we're allowed to, which is basically the k value. So while cur is actually less than k, right, strictly less than k, what we want to do is we want to get the current maximum value, or the current maximum value that appears most frequently within our input array nums, to be the maximum value of our count, which simply stores all of the different elements in our input array nums with its key value pair of how many times it actually occurs. But we can't just set this to the max value of count, because what the cur max is simply going to be assigned to if we just set it equal to the maximum of count is basically the greatest element within our array, which this isn't top k largest elements but frequent elements, so we actually have to have a key within our max keyword function, right? So we'll say the key is going to be actually equal to the count.get. And what the count.get method actually does in Python is it simply gets the maximum value, in this case it's of all the indices or corresponding pairs of our hash map. So if we had a hash map like this of a counter, that's going to be 5 to 2, 3 to 4, and 6 to 2. Right, in fact, I'll just make this 3. When we simply set cur max to be the max of count, it's simply going to return 6, because that is the greatest value that's actually within our hash map. And keep in mind that a counter of nums is going to be a hash map because it stores every element with how many times it appears within our input array nums. But in this case, if we have a key using the .get method of the count, what it's going to do is it's going to get the maximum value of the indices, or the second value corresponding pair within our hash map, rather than the first value. Okay, basically in this case, how many times or occurrences our element that we're currently looking at actually occurs within our input array nums. So in this case, the current max is going to be set equal to 4, because 3 occurs 4 times within our input array nums, which is the most frequent element that actually appears, right? So now that we've declared cur max to be the maximum value of count, with the key being the count.get, or the most frequent element, using the indices or .get method, what we'll do is we'll actually res.append, or add to our resolution array, the current max variable, which is basically going to be, again, the element that appears most within our input array nums, right? And then we actually have to increment our cur variable by 1, because this says that we have actually added one more element, or one more most frequent element, to our resolution array. We've got another element, and we have to increment our cur by 1, because that says that, hey, we have added another most frequent element, and we keep doing this until cur is still strictly less than k, so we've added less frequent elements within our res array until less than we're allowed to, which simply is denoted or signified by the k value, right? So we'll keep incrementing our cur by 1, which again simply monitors how many times we've added the most frequent element to our resolution array, or basically how many times we're allowed to, as signified by this while loop, right? But if we keep doing this, the cur max is going to stay the same, right? It's just going to be the most frequent element within our nums array. We want to actually keep updating this to move to the next frequent element, or the second most frequent element, but how do we do that? The way we can do that is, we can simply delete the cur max from our input array nums as a whole, so it will be updated within our next iteration of this while loop to be the next or second most frequent element of the key count.get method in our nums input array. So what we'll do is, we'll use the del keyword, which works strictly for hash maps in Python, and we'll say del count at that indice of cur max. And what this del keyword does is, it simply deletes every single occurrence of the cur max element within our input array, or basically deletes the cur max element from our count hash map. So we don't have that cur max element in our count hash map anymore, and so when we go back to this cur max and reset it to the max value of the count, with the key being the count.get method, it's going to be the second most frequent element rather than the first, because the first most frequent element is going to be deleted from the counter, which, as noted by the del keyword, right? And once we've done that, we've basically have appended the most frequent elements to our resolution string res, or basically resolution array res, and we can simply return res. And unless I made any syntax errors there, this should be completely fine. And as you can see, it is efficient code, beating 90% of users memory-wise. And honestly, it says I only beat 6% of users runtime complexity-wise, but like I said in my previous videos, it's ultimately random of when it says I beat percentage of users, and this is really the most efficient solution that you can get. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and like to my channel. It really does mean a lot, and I hope you guys learned something new, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.